Begin today the Gemara, 3 lines from the bottom of the Amud, Daf Beis Amud Beis. The Gemara here is discussing the halacha that Rav has said, Ein Einis Begitin, meaning when it comes to a get, a person gives his wife a get and he makes a condition with her, the get should take effect if I don't arrive within 12 months. And he didn't show up, but the reason he didn't show up is because of an Einis that happened. So now he comes and screams and says, true, I didn't show up, but the get shouldn't take effect because it was an Einis, it was out of my control. So therefore, she's not divorced. So Rav said, Ein Einis Begitin. We don't accept this taina that there was an Einis that happened. If he made this condition, he didn't show up, the get takes effect. So the Gemara tried to bring various sources to what Rav said. The Gemara refuted all the sources. The Gemara here in our conclusion says this is Rav's own chiddush. Ella, says the Gemara, Rav is farad and avshei kama. When Rav said that we don't accept this taina of Einis regarding a condition for a get, Rav was saying his own idea. This was his own svara. And what was the reason? Mishum tsnuais or mishum prutzais. Out of a concern of what would happen with modest women or women that are not modest, that may make a mistake and may act not properly, if you're going to say that you accept this taina that an einis could have happened. And the Gemara explains, Mishum tsnuais, for those modest women, what's the problem? Di amrit lo have a get. If you're going to say that when a condition was made and the condition seemingly was fulfilled, but there was an einis that happened, so then you're going to say because it was an einis, so therefore it's not going to be a get. So what might happen? Zimnin de lo yanis. It could be a situation where the husband made a condition and he did not show up, and there was no einis, and the condition was fulfilled, and the get should take effect. And visavra the honest. And this woman, which is the tsnua, she's going to be extra stringent upon herself, and she's going to think to herself, well, maybe Einis happened. Maybe the fact that he didn't show up is because he got stuck somewhere and he couldn't come. And she's not going to ever make peace with the fact that she's really, really divorced. Uma'agna, and therefore she's going to be stuck in v'yasfa. She's going to sit and not want to get remarried. So therefore, Chachamim instituted and said, if you make a condition and the husband doesn't show up, then the get takes effect. Mishom prutzais. On the other hand, we're also concerned that prutzais, women that are not modest, that it might be extra lenient with themselves, and they may also make a mistake over here. If you're going to say that this get does not take effect, so then zimnin the onus. So then it's possible what happens over here is that there was an einus, that he did not show up, and there was an einus, and because it was an einus, the get should not take effect. And va'amra and lo honest, and she's going to say to herself, she's going to be lenient with herself. She wants to get remarried. She's not going to be overly concerned. And she's going to say, nah, no einus happened. Tosfos over here actually adds to this that the Gemara uses the term prutzais. So therefore, this could be even in a case where there's some kind of a rumor. You hear that there's some kind of a rumor that something happened to her husband, that he wanted to show up and he couldn't make it. And she's going to ignore this rumor. She's going to say to herself, my husband made a condition with me that if he doesn't show up, the get should take effect. Look, he didn't show up. She's not going to pay attention to the rumor. She's going to go and get remarried. And then what happens? Vazla mitzvah, she gets remarried. V'nimtza get bottle. And now, all of a sudden, the husband shows up and he tells us the story that happened, that there was an einis, and he proves the fact that it was an einis. And now it turns out that the get is bottle. The whole get was not a get. Ubanea mamzeidim. And if she got remarried and she has children, the children are going to be mamzeidim. So therefore, this causes major problems. So Chachamim instituted that by a get, a situation of an einis, we don't take it into account. If he made a condition and he didn't show up, the get takes effect. That's the reason for this takana. The way the Gemara explains it, this is Rav's own chiddush. Fragt the Gemara, how could Chachamim make such a takana? Is there any situation where you could say, the midaraisa lo have a get, Minat Torah, this is not a get. And again, why Minat Torah should this not be a get? Because there's an einus. Minat Torah, there's a rule. Anytime there's an einus, Rashi here brings the pasuk, anytime something happens by force against your will, it has no credibility, b'chlal. So over here, the fact that you fulfilled the condition for the get to take effect, but it was out of your control, you didn't want to fulfill this condition, so it's an einus. So Minat Torah, this get does not take effect. And because of this reason that we just explained, that Chachamim instituted this for the purpose of those snuais or the prutzais, maybe too stringent or too lenient, and Chacham should come and say that the get takes effect, and therefore they allow this Eishes to get married to someone else. How could you say such a thing? Says the Gemara yes, we could do so. Because kol the mekadesh, every person that is mekadesh a woman, adaite the rabbana mekadesh. When he's mekadesher, he does it only with the agreement of the chachamim, as the nusach is, as Taisus here brings. This is the reason why when mekadesh a isha, you give her the ring. What do we say? Kedas Moshe v'Yisrael. That it's only based on the agreement of the chachamim. And therefore, in this case where the Chachamim want the get to take effect, what they're really essentially doing is they're uprooting the whole Kiddushin retroactively, saying that in this case he's not married anymore to this husband. Or really retroactively, he was never married to her, to him, that is. Yeah, there's a big discussion in Rishayim about this, how this works, whether this actually works retroactively, that he was really never married, not so pashut. Akopanim, the nekuda is that Chachamim could institute a takana regarding the get because the whole kiddushin in the first place was all with their agreement, and therefore in this case they don't want the kiddushin to be in effect anymore. Omelei Ravina Ravashi. That what? No, but how would it work mikana lahabal though? Once the marriage took effect, if the Kiddushin took effect, how do Chachamim have a koyach to uproot the marriage? The way they have the koyach to uproot the marriage is because the whole marriage l'chatchila was conditioned on the agreement of the Chachamim. So over here in this case where Chachamim do not want this marriage to continue, they want this get to take effect in order that there shouldn't be any problems. So even though Menat Torah, the get should not take effect. The only way this is possible is because with the Kiddushin in the first place, the Chachamim are saying that there was no Kiddushin here. Okay, so like I said, so that Rishayim discuss exactly how that works if it goes l'mafreya. Bisman hazeh, by the way, we don't rely on this concept of afkinu rabbanu l'kiddushin l'mafreya. We don't do such things to uproot a kiddushin l'mafreya. Even though there are this concept of chacham uprooting the kiddushin l'mafreya is brought in the Gemara many times, but bisman hazeh we don't rely on this concept. But the question over here is, we had this in the Gemara in Yevamos as well, and the Gemara always asks this question. Teinach kodesh bekaspe. So we understand now when Chachamim uproot the Kiddushin l'mafreya because they don't agree to the Kiddushin in this kind of a case. So if he was Mekadesh, his wife, with money or with a ring, so over here Chachamim have a koyach to say, what happens to that ring? What happens to that money? It becomes hefker. Chachamim have a koyach of hefker bez and hefker to say that the money is hefker. So therefore it's not money for Kiddushin anymore. Kaddish bibiyah, but one of the ways to be Mekadesh a woman is with biyah, with marital relations. So what happens now? Ma'ikalamim, what are you going to say? That biyah that he did l'shem kiddushin took effect, and what happens now to this biyah? How could they change that? Answers the Gemara, they can. Shavyur abanan libi'ilasai bi'ilas nus. Even though he had the kavana that it should be for l'shem kiddushin, but the Chachamim say that if you didn't do it based on our agreement to this, it's conditional to our agreement. So if we don't agree that this kiddushin should take effect, we consider this biyah to just be a biyah of znus. It's not a biyah of kiddushin at all. Okay, so this is all the conclusion of the first version of Rava's opinion that ein einis begitten, that we do not accept that taina, that there was an einis that happened, and therefore the get will take effect even in a case where there was an einis and he didn't fulfill the condition only because of the einis, the get still takes effect. But now there's another version, the exact opposite. Ikedamri, there were those that said, Amar Rava said, V'chein le'inyan gittin. Just like regarding marriage, when a person set a date for the marriage and he didn't show up or he couldn't make it, there was an einis that he couldn't get married on that date. So we said before that Yosef said that he doesn't have to feed his wife from that date going forward. So too regarding a get, when there was a date that you set for the get, when the get should take effect, and if you don't show up, if an einis happened and you couldn't show up, if the reason you didn't show up is because of an einis, the get will not take effect. Alma kasava Rava. So we see Rava holds Yeshain is begitten. Just like regarding a date set for kiddushin, for marriage, so too regarding a date set that is for a get to take effect. If you don't show up and you couldn't show up with an einis, we accept your taina that was an einis and the get will not take effect. So now we're going to have here in the Gemara a chazara, a review from what we learned yesterday. It's going to go through the same mishnayos that are brought yesterday from Masechta Gittin, and it'll ask on this halacha of Rava. So Meisvei, the question was asked. The Mishnah says in Gittin, person says to his wife, "Here's your get," and he makes a condition with her. It should take effect if I don't show up for 12 months. Umeis, and he passed away. Within these 12 months, ain't a get. The get does not take effect. So what's the reason? Because he's not alive. If the get is taking effect at the end of 12 months and he's dead at that point, he can't give a get if he's not alive. But what do we understand from this? May sudein get, only because he died. So he's not here for the get to take effect. That's why there's no get. Ha chala. But if you got sick and therefore he couldn't travel, he couldn't show up, there was an einus here. Harei get. He's alive, and therefore the fact that he couldn't show up, it doesn't matter, even though it was an einus. But b'payil, he did not show up, and the get will take effect. So I see here, when an einus takes place, we don't care about this einus. He didn't show up, and the get takes effect. So this is a question on this version of Rava that we do accept the tain of an einus by a get. Says the Gemara, really, the same halacha would apply even if you got sick. So then why does the Mishnah, that is, not say the case of chala? Why does it only say if he died? So really, it's the same thing. Again, even if you got sick, so it was an einus, so it's not going to be a get either. But the reason why the Mishnah says the case of him that he died, it's coming to tell you, to teach you this very halacha itself, the ein get la'achamisa, that a get cannot take effect after a person passes away. You would think maybe a person has the power to say, while he's alive, I want this get to take effect after I die. The Mishnah is coming to tell me this very halacha itself, that the get does not take effect after he dies. So there's no diuk over here why it did not say chala. It has to teach me this very halacha itself. Says the Gemara, you can't say so. Ein get lachamisa tanu lereisha. This halacha that a get can't take effect after a person passes away, that it already says in the Reisha, and the Gemara doesn't quote here the Reisha because it quoted it already on Daf Beis and Mid Beis. It says it clearly in the Reisha of the Mishnah. A person says, here, this is your get, and it should take effect, that is, after I pass away. The get does not take effect, so it said it already in the Reisha. So the Gemara continues, as we learned yesterday, but Dilma, there's another scenario of a get that takes effect after a person passes away. Dilma la fukim de Rabbi Seinu. Maybe over here, it's coming to exclude from the opinion of Rabbi Seinu. So the Gemara spelled this out in the Gemara that we learned yesterday. What's the opinion of Rabbi Seinu? That anytime you write a date in a get, the get really takes effect retroactively. So even though he died before the 12 months are up, but according to Rabbi Seinu, which is really Rabbi Yosi, the get will take effect. Why it's not considered to be a get taking effect after he died? Because the date in the get shows that the get really takes effect retroactively before he died. So maybe over here, this case where it said that I'm giving you a get and it should take effect if I don't come after 12 months, it's coming to say that we don't paskin like Rabbi Seinu, and the get is taking effect at the end of the 12 months, and therefore if he died in the middle, the get cannot take effect. Maybe that's what this Mishnah is coming to teach me. And therefore it's no question on what Rava said. We can't be medayik anything from this Mishnah regarding a case where a person got sick and there was an einus. There's no diak here. Toshema, so the Gemara now brings from the Seifa of that Mishnah there, May achshav. So this is a different kind of condition. The person clearly said May achshav. The get should take effect from today. If I don't show up for 12 months. So here he said it clearly. If I don't show up after 12 months, that the get should take effect retroactively. And here he died within 12 months. The get takes effect. Why does the get take effect? Because it's not taking effect at the end of the 12 months when he's dead. It's taking effect me'achshav, from before, retroactively. So therefore it takes effect. So now what do we see over here? But this person didn't show up for 12 months. Why didn't he show up for 12 months? Because he died. He couldn't make it. So this is the greatest einus. So my love, don't you think, what does this mean? Hu adin l'chala. Just like a case where a person doesn't show up and it's an einus because he died, so too if there was less of an einus, where the person got sick and he couldn't show up, it's also, this should be the same halacha, that the get should still take effect even though the reason he didn't show up is because he got sick. So therefore, there's a question on the second version of Rava's opinion that we just said here, that if it's an einus, so then it doesn't count, then the get should not take effect. Says the Gemara, loy meis dafke meis. If he died, only in this case will the get take effect. The reason is the tepel kame yavam. The whole reason why he made this condition that if he doesn't show up, the get should take effect, is because he doesn't want his wife to fall into this trouble that he should have to deal with a yavam. But in a case where he's still alive and he's sick, so his wife won't have to deal with the yavam, he's still here. In such a case, he didn't want the get to take effect at all. Okay, Tashama, again the Gemara brings the same story we learned yesterday. Me'ahu da amar lahu. Person said as follows: if I don't show up for 30 days, the get should take effect. Also, at the end of 30 days he's coming. And a river didn't allow him to cross. He couldn't cross over the river to come. So he's screaming from the other side of the river, Chazud asai, see, I'm on my way, I'm here, I'm coming, and I can't make it. So it's a big einus. So it's not my fault that I'm not fulfilling, that I'm not arriving to be mevatel this get. Shmuel, and Shmuel say about this case, Lo yishmei masya, too bad. It's not considered that he arrived, even though it's out of his control. Says the Gemara, but there's no rai from that story to what we're speaking about here. Why? Einse the shchiach shani. This kind of an einus, where there's a river, and it's very common that you can't cross the river. So this is something that he should have taken into account. The kivin the bayalei lasnui v'lo yasni. He should have said this clearly in the condition when he said l'chatchila that if I don't come for 30 days, he should have clearly spelled out that there may be a river that's going to stop me from coming. And he didn't say this clearly. Hu the afsad nafshay. So he causes his own loss, because he didn't spell this out l'chatchila. So therefore, if the river is the reason they didn't come, it doesn't matter, the get will still take effect.
So Paul now we're saying that it does work retroactively?
The get will take effect, not necessarily retroactively. Retroactively is only if you say me'achshav. But the point is that we could still say that the get will take effect, even though there was an einus, it was out of his control that he didn't show up, the get will still take effect. Okay, so we have over here two versions. This is the conclusion of this part of the Gemara. Two versions, but this is a side subject that the Gemara brought up in a get. And just as a conclusion to this piece of the sugya here, there's a taisus here which discusses halacha lamaisa. What do we paskin regarding the einus by a get? Will the get take effect? Will it not take effect? So taisus over here says it will depend what kind of an einus there is. As you can see here in the Gemara already hints to the fact that there's different kinds of einsim. Taisus divides it into three categories. There's an einus which is very shchiach, like this case of a river. Then there's an einus which is completely out of your control, where you couldn't have considered it at all such an einus could have happened. And then there's an einus which Taisus says is in between. It's shchiach v'lo shchiach. It happens, but it doesn't happen so often. So it depends. Taisus' conclusion is it depends on the level of the einus that takes place. Okay, now the Gemara goes back to our Mishnah. What did it say in our Mishnah? The date that you set for a woman to get married, it should be in what day of the week? On a Wednesday. Because the Bezdin is available the next morning, on Thursday morning, if there's any issues. This was only said from when Ezra made his takana, that the Bezdin sits in the city and is available for people on a Monday and on a Thursday. So therefore, from that time, they said that it should be on a Wednesday. So the Bezdin is established and is available on Monday and Thursday. Before this takana of Ezra, Shabbat edinim kvum b'chol yaim. So the Bezdin was there established and available for everyone every day. So yishanisis b'chol yaim. So a woman could get married any day. So the next morning there's always a Bezdin available. Says the Gemara, or asks the Gemara, kaidim takanas Ezra. Rav Shmuel by Yitzchak is telling me a halacha before the times of Ezra, before the times of the beginning of the second Beis Hamikdash. My dahava. What was. How is this relevant today? Why would he teach me this halacha that's not relevant today? Answers the Gemara, hachikama. This is what Rav Shmuel by Yitzchak meant to say. If it's a time and place where you have the Bezdin that's only established in the city and available on Monday and Thursday, like Ezra was misaken, like Ezra instituted, so then again, let me read again. Sorry. If you have today a Bezdin that's kavua, that's established in the city every single day, like it was before the takana of Ezra, so then isha nisas b'chol yayim. A woman can get married every single day. So here's the answer to the question that you may have wondered when you learned the first Mishnah here yesterday. Why taka don't we make weddings today only on a Wednesday, like the Mishnah clearly said? The answer is because today the Bezdin is open and available for everyone, not only on a Monday and a Thursday, but every single day. That's one of the reasons. There's another reason also, by the way, because the main reason why we need the Bezdin immediately to be available is because the main concern we have is that she may have had a relationship with someone else between the Edison and the Nisuin. And she's an Eishes Ish at that point, and you become Asa to her. But today, the Edison and Nisuin are made at the same time. So therefore, we don't have the concern B'chlal today, so that's another reason why this whole thing is not relevant today. Zok to Gemara. Why is this true though? Why don't we have to wait till Wednesday? Habi'inon shaktu. But isn't there the other reason why we have to wait until Wednesday, which is the takana of shaktu? The Chachamim were diligent about this. They wanted that the wedding should be on a Wednesday, so you should have 3 days to prepare for the wedding, for the chasana, the meal, and everything else that comes along with it. Answers the Gemara, the triachle. If he's able to prepare already everything, the food or whatever he needs from before Shabbos, and he wants to make the chasana on a Sunday, even though usually, before the Gemara said the Geshainim explained that it's difficult to prepare from before Shabbos, that the food should stay fresh. But if he's able to prepare from before and he has everything available, ready to go on a Sunday, you can make the chasana on a Sunday as well. Zok the Gemara, Mai Shoktu. What is this Shoktu? So as Rashi explains, the Gemara's question is not what is the takana of Shoktu, because we already brought this and we learned about this before, but rather the Gemara is asking, where is really the source of this takana of Shoktu that the Chachamim instituted, that in order for the chasana to be ready, you have to wait until Wednesday. There has to be some source of a braisa somewhere, otherwise you wouldn't ask this as a question of Shmuel Bar Yitzchak. He's an Amayra, we wouldn't ask, so it has to be a braisa somewhere. So the Tanya, we learned about this takana clearly in the Braisa. Why is it that the Chachamim instituted that a girl gets married on a Wednesday? So that if he has a taina, that when he has relationship with her, that she's not a basula, so he immediately the next morning can go to Bezdin. So the Braisa asks, if so, you can get married on a Sunday night as well, and then the next morning on Monday, if you have a problem, you can go to the Bezdin. So here the Braisa answers, Shaktu Chachamim al Takanas b'nei Yisrael. The Chachamim were diligent regarding the takana of the marriage of a Bas Yisrael, she'ei adam terech b'suda shloish yamim, that he should be working and preparing for the chasana 3 days, echad b'Shabbos, v'sheni b'Shabbos, v'shlishi b'Shabbos, Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday, u'b'revi kainsa. And on a Wednesday, he gets married to her. Now the Braisa continues and says as follows, Misakana ve'elech, from a time when there was a danger. And the Gemara will discuss right here in a moment what exactly this danger is. So from this time of a danger, the custom became to get married on a Tuesday. And the Chachamim did not protest against this. But 1 day earlier, yes, but 2 days earlier, on a Monday, you should not get married. You could only 1 day earlier. If it's a situation where there's an aynis, and the Gemara will explain which aynis we're speaking about, then mutter, it's allowed to get married to her even on a Monday. Another halacha, umafrishin es a chasen min akala. We separate a chasen from a kala, that they should not have any marriage relations on Leilei Shabbos on Friday night, tchila, the first time they have relations with one another, or besula, this should not be on a Friday night, because the first time he has relations with her on a Friday night, he's causing her to have a wound, a chabura, and this is asr to be done on Shabbos. And there's going to be a lengthy discussion in the Gemara about this that we're going to learn in Mitzvah later. Okay, but now the Gemara here will go through this last chelik of the Braisa. We just learned over here 3 points. 1 point about a sakana, that you can make the chasana a day earlier on Tuesday. Another point about the aynis, that you can make the chasana even on a Monday. And then the third point about not having relations the first time on Friday night. The Gemara is going to go through all these 3 points, and there'll be a big discussion about this. Let's start with the sakana. So the Gemara, my sakana. What sakana are we speaking about here? If you're going to say the sakana is the amri, that there was a gzeira, that they made a decree in that time, psula nisas l'yom revi, that any girl that gets married on a Wednesday, taharik, will be killed. That was the sakana. Pashat light, their life was in danger if you get married on a Wednesday. Frek the Gemara,
Why?
This is the Goyim. The Goyim made this gzeira. They didn't want you to get married. So the question is, if there was a real sakana to this extent that they threatened to kill if you get married on a Wednesday, so how could the Braisa say that the minig was that they got married the day before? A minig, legamri nekre. We should definitely totally uproot this date of Wednesday. Amar Rabbe, so Rabbe said the gzeira was different. The Amri, what they said was, Besula, Hanisas, B'yayim Revi, a Besula that gets married on a Wednesday, Tiboel, Lahagmain Tchila. Before she goes to get married to her husband, she has to first have relations with the Hagmain, with this governor, with this minister, whoever it is. So first she has to have relations with him. That was the decree that they made. And therefore, they didn't want to get married on that day, they made it a day earlier. But the Gemara asks him this, Hi Sakana. So why does the Braisa say the expression that this was a danger? It wasn't a danger. Einisu. The expression the Braisa should have said is that there's an eines. That the gzeira was that they're forcing the Jewish girls before they get married to their husband to have a relationship with this hagmain. That's what we should have said. Eines. Like the Braisa itself actually says afterwards. The next case, the Braisa uses the term eines. And says the Gemara, no, the reason why this is a danger is, in other words, that their lives are in danger, because there are these modest women that even though there is this gzeira, that they have to have a relationship with this hagmain, but they're not interested, they don't want, and therefore they're going to be ready to die. They're going to be ready to die and get married and to only have a relationship with their husband. And and therefore they're going to come to a situation of a danger. So therefore it is a sakana. But why don't we teach them? Why don't we tell them the einis shari? That to have a relationship with this hagmain first, even though you already had a relationship with someone else, but still you're allowed to go and get married to your husband. So Rashi explains, what does this mean? The halacha b'negeya to a woman that gets married to a Yisrael is that even if she was already an Eishes Ish, there was already an Edison, she's an Eishes Ish, and she had a relationship with someone else, but if the relationship with someone else was ba'aynes, by force, against her will, she's mutter to go back to her husband. So these tznuais that are putting their lives in danger by refusing to have this relationship with the hagmain first, why don't we teach them and say to them that even if you're going to have a relationship with him, it's still going to be mutter for you to go get married to your husband. That's the simple pshat of the Gemara. But there's another point over here, and that is what Tosfos adds. But l'chayre, don't we know that there are 3 averes that are Yeharik Val Yaver? Avodah Zarah, Gilui Arayis, and Shvichas Damim. So don't these women have to be ready to die and not to have a relationship with this hagmain? So Tosfos answers, no, this chiyuv of Yeharik Val Yavid, that you have to be ready to die for Gilui Arayis, does not apply to a woman. And Tosfos brings the famous raya from this that the Gemara says, Benegei to Esther, when Esther got married to Achashverosh, the Gemara there says that it was ba'inus, and she did not have to be ready to die for this. And the reason is because Esther karka oilam haisa, that's the expression the Gemara uses, which means that the woman does no action, she's being forced, and there's nothing that she's doing actively, and therefore this is not an isser of Gilui Arayis for her. And therefore, that's sort of part of what the Gemara is saying over here. When the Gemara says, V'lidrish lahu da'aynis shari, that first of all, it's allowed for her to go to her husband even after this. And second of all, it's not one of the 3 averes that she has to be ready to die for. So why are these tznuais putting themselves into danger? Why don't we tell everybody that this is allowed? And it says the Gemara, we don't want to tell everyone this is allowed because ikke prutzais. Because then you have those women that are prutzais that they're not, they're immodest women, and they are going to willingly go and have a relationship with this hagmain. And once you have a relationship with someone else, beratzain, willingly, then you do become asa to your husband. So they didn't want to come and tell everybody that this is allowed, because then the prutzas are going to take advantage of this. So B'kitzur, the point still remains that there's a sakana here, that these tznuais are going to be ready to die in this situation. And ve'kenami kayanis. Besides this, there's also the kayanis. What does it mean over here, the kayanis? So the Gemara says that by kayanis, they asa to their husband even when it's an einis. So therefore, because that's halacha by a kayan, eishes kayan. When it says here in the Gemara kayanis, it means an eishes kayan, a wife of a kayan. So even if she had a relation with someone else as an eishes ish, but einis, she becomes asa to her husband. So they're going to be ready to die for this. So therefore, it doesn't use the term einis in the Braise, it uses the term sakana. That's what the sakana was. Frek the Gemara, so if so, we're sort of back to the original question. So velekre, we should uproot bechlal, the entire takana that Chachamim made that should get married on a Wednesday. We should uproot that date of a Wednesday if there was a sakana on this day. And says the Gemara, they didn't uproot it completely. And the reason is, gzeire avida de batla. The gzeira that they made, that they have to be boiled, the hagmain first, this gzeira that was made then, that's something that will eventually pass. This gzeira, this decree, is not going to remain forever. V'takante, the rabbanan, mikami gzeira lo yakrinan. So this institution that Chachamim instituted, and they had a good reason, that they wanted it to be dafka on Wednesday, Chachamim are not going to completely uproot their takana because of this gzeira, which is a temporary thing. So therefore, the Chachamim said, the Braise that is says that at the time when this Gzeira was in effect, they were naig that they got married a day earlier. But they weren't oiked the Gzeira completely because they knew that this Gzeira is going to pass. Ihachi, frek the Gemara, so what are we saying over here? That was this Gzeira that before you get married, you have to be boil the Hagmain first. Now, Ihachi b'shlishi nami, I'll see you bal. If so what it says, so their minig is that they're going to get married on a Tuesday. So what's going to happen? The hagman is going to come on a Tuesday and say that before you have relation with your husband, you have to come to me. Same thing will happen on a Tuesday. And says the Gemara, no, we're not concerned that it's going to happen on a Tuesday. Why? Once they uprooted it from the established date that it's on a Wednesday, and there was a minig, it was only a minig, it wasn't something that was established. On a Tuesday, that's not a date that he knows for sure that the Bnei Yisrael are getting married, so this hagman is not going to come into the city, into the Jewish quarter to see when they're getting married, to be boil them first. So therefore, we're not concerned that this could happen on a Tuesday as well. Okay, so that explains this part of the Braisa. Then the next part of the Braisa, it said, on a Monday, you should not get married. But if there's an eines, then mutter. Then you are allowed to get married even on a Monday. So my eines, what's the eines that we're speaking about here? If we're speaking about the same eines that we spoke about before, that there's a hagman that says that you should have relations with him before the husband, so that can't be. I mean, besides the fact that the Braisa is repeating itself, and the Braisa is saying if there's an eines, okay, that's not a question that it's repeating itself. But the Gemara's question is hasam kari le sakana. Before, the Braisa refers to this situation as something which is a danger, as the Gemara explained before. The reason why it's a danger is because of the tznuais and the kainis that might be ready to die for this. And v'hacha kari le eines, and here we're referring to it as an eines. Why is the Braisa changing the terminology? This must be a different case. And v'su hasam nagu. Before we said that because of the sakana, the custom was that they got married the day before. Hacha mutter. And over here, the Braisa uses a different expression, that because it's an eines, they're allowed to get married the day before. Omar Rave, so Rave says, you're right, it's a new case. And the case here is as follows. The Omri, when people came and said, Sar Tzva Bali'ir, that the general of the army is coming into the city with all of his soldiers, and therefore, what are we concerned about? They prepared food for the wedding, and now the army, the general comes with his army to the city, he's going to eat up all the food that was prepared for the wedding. That's the eines here. And in this case, the Braisa says you can get married on a Monday. Says the Gemara, what's happening here? Hey chedami, what's the case? If he's coming into the city, he's arriving on Wednesday, and he's going to leave. So le'akif, so let them wait until the next Wednesday. Let them get married the following Wednesday. Why do they have to get married a day or two before? And says the Gemara, le'tzriche da'asi v'kova begimel. Okay, sorry. Le'tzriche da'asi v'kova, that he's coming and he's staying in the city. Fragt the Gemara, begimel mia lichnois. But if so, the question still remains, why do they have to get married 2 days before? Let them get married 1 day before he comes. Let them get married on a Tuesday. The Braisa here says that in a case where it's an eines, they get married on a Monday. Why on a Tuesday? Why on a Monday, that is? Why not on Tuesday? Answers the Gemara, because when he arrives into the city, isparva the day, so those that are his entourage, or those that are there that come along with him, begimel kasa. They already begin arriving on a Tuesday, so they arrive on Tuesday and they arrive on Wednesday, and therefore they can't get married not on Tuesday and not on Wednesday, so they're makdim the wedding to Monday. That's the eines that we're speaking about over here in the Gemara. Okay, then the Gemara will bring a whole second pshat when we get to what this eines is, and there'll be a lengthy discussion about this eines. Okay.